Hello everyone and welcome to another video on how I created this mixed media canvas called the Dancing Seahorses. Here's a close-up of the finished piece, lots of texture, lots of mixed media. I started with the canvas panel. I splattered a lot of masking fluid all over the surface, as well as just a quick spritz of yellow ink before I started putting down my shapes. I've sprayed the back of these shapes with 3M spray mount repositioning spray. Just gives them that little bit of stickiness so that they won't come apart on me when I'm starting putting lots and lots of stuff down. I've die cut all these shapes out. It's an Intricutz die set under the sea. I've just cut the bits of paper out of a magazine to make the wave shapes. What I'm doing here is I want to create layers of colour to give that in-depth view. So once I've got a few pieces down, I'll start spraying with inks and then adding lots and lots and lots of more pieces of under the sea themed die cuts and inks as we go along. So there you can see my first layer of fairly randomly placed die cut pieces of card. Spritzed it now with some blue dye ink and some green. I mix all of these sprays myself from various things. Most of these are Rusho granules mixed in with alcohol and water. Now I'm going to add another layer of paper cutouts, still adding depth and interest to my background. Again, these are just hand cut out of old magazines. Sprayed the back with this spray mount to try and get them to stay put, because I don't really want the dye leaking underneath and losing the edge of the shapes. So once I've got enough paper shapes down, put another layer of ink on, dyeing it with the red and just checking whether I like it or whether I need some more. Trying to get a graduation in colour, so it's the yellows and the greens are paler at the top and then it gradually gets darker as it comes down the canvas, so putting some blues and reds on. Now the exciting part, because you're never quite sure what you're going to see. Taking off all of the bits and pieces that I've used to mask the canvas from underneath, peeling them all off to see what's revealed underneath. It's wonderful, this bit. And there we go, that's it. You can still see the yellow from the masking fluid, but it's looking quite good at this point. Now I've mixed up some acrylic paints. I've got the red, yellow ochre, Jamaican orange. Just mixing up a nice colour there. You can see we're trying to get a nice pale orange going. And now I'm going to use those the bits of card which I've cut my cutouts from as a stencil to start masking the background while I dab some colour through. So I'm creating a coral, the undersea orangey corally seaweed effect at the bottom of the canvas here. Changing the colour, just making it darker down the sides, lighter to get the 3D effect. Always adding interest, there we go. Again, a lot of this you won't see at the end, but it all adds interest. Still got my masking fluid on, so I'm still preserving some of the white splashes on my canvas for later. So I've added some of those seaweed effect paints around the bottom and reaching up into the sea on my canvas. Now I'm just using a stippling brush to get into the nooks and crannies of the last one. There we go. So I've used a thicker texture paint on there to create some more interest. The next step is to start with my filling in that blank bit in the middle. So here comes some seahorses. There we go. I'm just positioning them to see where I like them. Now I'm adding lots and lots of more die cuts to the top of the picture. Again, it's all about adding depth and interest. Adding some more wave shapes at the bottom and spritzing it with my yellow, and there we can see I've just added that little bit more interest to the top of the canvas where I felt it was lacking a little something. I'll clear those off and see what the effect is and leave it to dry. So there we go, that's the background finished. Now I've die cut a lot more of my under the sea shapes ready to decorate to go onto the canvas themselves. Doing all this die cutting is extremely time consuming. It takes almost as long as everything else, but it's worth it in the end. Here we go, just organising them, picking out the ones I want, trying to get as many on that piece of card as I can, and then we'll start spritzing them. Here we go, just spritzing them with the different colour dye inks, watercolour inks, acrylic paintings, whatever's in my bottle that I've mixed to get the colour that I want. Ink is a very loose definition for what's in those bottles, I tell you. There's all sorts in there. I'm just mixing and matching my colours. Blues, yellows, greens are all going on. There's a nice dark blue going on. There we go, just keep adding different layers of colour, and now bringing in the green. It's the same colours, the same dye inks that I used in the background, keeping the consistency across the piece so that the colours all match. Now I'm just going to splatter some white acrylic paint over it. You could use gesso if you want to. A lot of people do use gesso for splattering. This is just the white acrylic paint I had on my plate. Mix it with a little bit of water until you get a nice splatter, and off we go. I'm just splattering it over. So once I finish the splattering, I'm going to go back in with some inks, keep building the colour up until I get the effect that I want. My cat's just joined me on my knee, so you might get some meowing as well going on in a minute. But now to the blue dye ink. I did do a little video on how I make these dye inks, but you can see me there. I'm just putting some of the Brush-O granules into the bottle. I've added a tiny bit of water too. There's the Brush-O going in. The Brush-O is water soluble. You have to have some water in there to dissolve it, otherwise it just sits in the liquid. There you go, just stirring it up with a bit of water. Now I'm adding the isopropyl alcohol. I'll just use a syringe to get it out of the tub with, because I can't get it out any other way, and diluting that down. I like putting the alcohol to the Brush-O. It works without it, to be fair. You could just do it as a water suspension, but with the alcohol in there it dries that little bit faster, and you seem to get a better spread of pigment across your piece. There you go. You can see that's worked beautifully. Getting that blue onto there. Right, there's my canvas. Now it's time to get the masking fluid off. So just rubbing away with my thumb, trying to find every single last piece of it. It takes quite a while because some of those little bits are hidden now underneath the inks and things. So you can see just those subtle little white dots add a little bit more interest as well to the canvas. So once the canvas is cleared of all the masking fluid, it's time to start doing the fun stuff and arranging all the paper die cuts onto my background. So first of all, I'm just going to place them where I think they should go, and building them up from front to back to get a really balanced picture. Keep using the same colours throughout helps, although it's a very fussy look. Having all the same colours throughout helps add consistency, and it all works together then. There's actually only the yellow, the green, the blue and the red in there, and a little bit of copper paint I think on the end, on the anchor, and that's it. Still placing all my bits and pieces until I'm happy with the layout. Alright, so now I'm using PVA, and yes, that is a hair dye bottle. It's got a really fine tip on it, perfect for getting the PVA glue in just the right place. So I'm adding the PVA to the back of these pieces of paper, card, die cuts, sticking them down. I'm not too worried about getting every last little piece of paper covered in glue, because they'll be coated in gel medium and varnish at the end anyway, so whatever's not stuck down will be stuck down before the piece is finished. I'm also deliberately leaving some of the edges loose so I can tuck other things behind to get that 3D effect as well. So here we go, we're just carrying on sticking down all those die cuts. I snip into the bigger ones, cut out some of the more intricate designs. Don't leave them as they are, just personalise them, make them work for the piece. And I've just jumped to near the end where we can see all the pieces stuck down with the PVA. Again, a lot of those edges are loose. Don't fuss about it at this point in time. Pale blue spray, just to try and add a similar colour across the whole piece now to bring it all together as one coherent piece of work. That little spray bottle is just, I think it's ultramarine acrylic paint with white mixed with water. Splattering some more white across the top, treating the whole piece now, so again building consistency. And some orange splatters, great big blob in the middle that I think I'll deal with in a second or two. To pick up the orange that's on the seaweed, I thought I'm going to put some orangey red across the piece as well to get that consistency of the colouring. There we go, just blotting off where it's gone a bit too splodgy. There's a bit too much paint in that area. Now I've got a fine brush with some white acrylic on, just going around putting some highlights in, bringing out some of those different layers of die cut so they stand out from each other so you can see them. And we're just going around the piece, bringing them out. So the next thing I decided to do was, some of my seahorses seem to have lost definition, so I'm putting on some of the stash of the ones that I've sprayed before and different coloured ones, just to bring the eye back into the centre of the picture. So I'm building them up, trying to arrange them for the best effects, putting some extra different colour coral in as well, so I've got the same colour in the seahorse as in other elements in my picture, and then we'll just glue them all down once I'm happy. Okay, the piece is beginning to come together now quite nicely. The next step is I'm going to add its sparkle writer. It's wonderfully in focus, that, isn't it? Using card making to add little dots of sparkle sequin. There's different ones out there, you can get any that you fancy. The problem with this one, I found out as it dried, is it picked up the background colour, because the brush is water soluble and these must have water in them. It picked up the colour of what was in the background, so it didn't give me the clear sparkle I was after, but actually it was very pretty. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, but I wasn't too disappointed with it when it dried. It dries clear and sparkly. That spray there you can see me shaking is a grey acrylic with water in a spray bottle. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with it. Oh, I know what I'm doing with it. I'm looking at that anchor and I'm going to use it just to tone down some white acrylic, because that anchor I want it to look rusty and old, as if it's been under the sea for a bit of a long time. So I've got my grey acrylic in there, a bit of cadmium red to add with that kind of rusty feel to it, and then I'll come in a minute or two with some white for the highlights, so you can to try and build up that 3D effect of the anchor underwater. There we go, you can see it beginning to come together. And then we leave it just to dry for the next step. Now everything's dried off, I'm adding some sparkles just around different elements on the picture. It's a very sparkly picture when it's finished, this. So these are just glitter glues that I'm adding using makeup sponge and my finger, basically, to get the effect I want. Now I'm going back into that anchor because the anchor, now it's dry, it needs finishing off. It doesn't look quite there yet. This is a copper embossing gel, I think, not quite a stencil paint. It's wonderful stuff. I've used it on nearly everything I've done. It's so versatile. You see, I'm just adding it to my anchor to get that nice metallic, a dull metallic finish to it. Still picking up the colours of the paint from underneath. I haven't lost those altogether. Now I'm just using a black ink pad and now that makeup sponge again, just to pick up on the edges of that anchor to give it that old, I'm still working on it to give that old aged feel. There we go, think. Alright, now it's time to add the edging around the edge of my canvas. I'm just using gardening string. It's a twine, it's a natural Hessian twine, which will fit in beautifully with the theme of Under the Sea. Putting a bead of PVA all the way around my canvas to start with. This is where using that hair dye bottle really, really comes into its own. It's got a nice fine tip on it, and I can just get the glue exactly where I want to. Now you can see I'm fighting with this string here. Those little sparkly bits are still a bit wet at this point. I'm using small plastic and wooden pegs. You get these at Christmas time, give Christmas cards up with. Brilliant in crafting. It was so useful. I've got a huge pot of them now. Whenever I see some more, I buy some. And I'm going to go all the way around my canvas with this string. And it just pulls the whole piece together. Because it is a very busy picture. I need to make sure I've got some consistent elements to it. Try to use that with the colours. And now with this edging which frames the picture when we're done. And we're going to go all the way around and then leave it to dry. So that's what it looks like with the first layer of string in place. Now what I'm doing, I'm putting another bead of PVA inside that twine to make sure it's glued to the canvas. That canvas isn't smooth at all. There's lots of elements, there's lots of gaps. So I'm using that PVA to fill in the gaps to make sure my twine is well and truly stuck down. And now it's a case of leaving it to dry. Once it's dry, you can take off those pegs. And there we go. Once we've got all those pegs off, I'm going to add a second layer of twine. First layer is quite thin. We need so another bead of PVA, and then I'll add my twine and peg it all back down again. There we go. Just make sure there's enough PVA all the way around so that nothing's going to come adrift on me. And we'll just fix that twine in place again with my pegs. There we go. The second layer of twine's stuck down. I'm just doing some running repairs to a bit of seaweed that's gone adrift, caught by a wave, probably caught by my hand. And now just having a look. Because the sparkly glitter that I put on a while ago has now picked up the background colour, I haven't got that silvery, pearly water air bubbles that I wanted running through my canvas. So I'm using some of these stick-on decorative pearls. Pick them up from card making supplies. These are all stuck together in a string, so I have to cut them apart. So I'm just decorating them so I've got like a string of bubbles coming up through my canvas, and I'm weaving them through the glittery bubbles that are there as well. Okay, I think we've got enough on there. Left it all to dry again. That bottom right hand corner, because I've used quite a few water soluble paints in there, a twine had picked up a little bit of paint, but I just cleaned it off with a spot of water. It was fine. Right, just removing the last couple of pegs, and it's time to start finishing this piece off. Get it ready to face a life on a wall somewhere. Putting a big thick layer of gel medium over everything. It'll help glue anything down that's loose. It'll help protect all the elements from dust, from any kind of damage that might be coming its way. I'm doing this very quickly and very gently because I don't want my colours to smudge with the gel medium. So I'm making sure the bone dry, and then I'm very quickly trying not to go over the same area more than once. Just bobbing that gel medium down. Do that very quickly, and then over the twine as well. So that's really well stuck down. Just stippling it in, making sure it's around the edges of my die cuts. Yeah, that corner's not quite down yet because I did have to mess around with it a little bit, but the gel medium will take care of that and stick it down for me. Once it's dry, trimmed off all the edges, and we're about finished there. Going back with my, now it's got a layer of gel medium, these sparkles will not pick up the background colour, so I'll get my little sparkles back. So I'm going over where some of the little white dots were to get that, you can see that stream of white, the bubbles that I want going through the canvas. Now I'm going back in with my glitter glues, trying to pick out the same colour as the element they're sitting on, and adding extra interest, extra sparkle. You never have too much sparkle when you're underwater, can you now? So I've got blues, greens, yellows, just trying to get those highlights and lowlights popping a little bit as well with my elements. Working around the canvas from one bit to another so every space gets the same amount of attention. Okay, and onto the anchor I'm just putting some black glitter in there to give that a little bit of an impact. I think we're finished. It's ready now for signing. I'll just find a pen that'll show up over all the stuff that's on there. And here we go. Tried a purple one first. That one didn't work. There's a lot of stuff on this canvas now. So I'm using one of my new pens. I do like these pens. They write on anything. And they work beautifully on a non-porous surface. And there we have the finished article. All ready. Just need to leave those little glitter bits to dry. And there we have it, the finished piece. It's beautiful. I do love this little piece. It's all glossy and sparkly, just what you would imagine a world underwater to be like. And if you can have a look at the detail on the close-ups, you can see all the sparkles and the bubbles, just what you'd like to see. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe for more videos that are coming soon. Thank you so much for watching.